We have another fun, hilarious, administration-compliant show.
Solidarity from the host of The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, as the companies behind some of America's best-known talk shows come under pressure from the current administration.
All this swirling around, are the naysayers and the critics right? Is Donald Trump stifling free speech?
Of course not, John.
It comes after the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel after comments suggesting the killer of Charlie Kirk in the US was a Trump supporter.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Support from the Late Show host Stephen Colbert too, questioning who will be next to be silenced.
But tonight, we are all Jimmy Kimmel. I still have a show though, right? Okay, good. With an autocrat, you cannot give an inch. And if ABC thinks that this is going to satisfy the regime, they are woefully naive.
It's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Jimmy Kimmel is a household name, not just in the US. His celebrity interviews and satire spanning the globe for more than 20 years. It's arguably a form of power and one that has sat uneasily with the president. Kimmel's suspension from position as the host, a win for Donald Trump. On his way back to the US from the UK on Air Force One, the president happily dug in his heels. This is directly from his own playbook and suggestions that some TV networks should have their licenses taken away.
Anybody could replace him. Guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired, he had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent, and more importantly than talent, he had no, because a lot of people have no talent, they get ratings. But he had no ratings. His ratings were worse than Colbert, I think. But when you go back and you take a look, all they do is say Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. Go back.
The head of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, has said that TV companies could do this the easy way or the hard way in complying, and hoped other broadcasters would follow ABC's lead. To many, it appears to be a direct threat. Nexstar Media Group, which has said it now won't air Kimmel's show on its stations, is currently seeking FCC approval for a multi-billion-dollar merger. On social media, comments that this was all in Project 2025, a 900-page ultra-conservative wish list to expand Trump's presidential power. Carr responding with a Jack Nicholson gif to the affirmative. It's led former President Barack Obama to weigh in. He said after years of complaining about cancel culture, the current administration has taken it to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory action against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters and commentators it doesn't like. On Hollywood Boulevard, people wanted to be heard. Protests outside where Jimmy Kimmel usually records his show against what they say is the curtailment of free speech.
That when Donald Trump tries to send a message, when he tries to send a message by silencing Jimmy Kimmel, he is trying to send a message to everybody. Watch what you say. No matter how big you are, no matter how beloved you are, he will take you down and make an example of you.
And a few miles north in Burbank, outside the Disney studios too. Disney is ABC's parent company.
I think that if the government can control the media, then we slip dangerously into fascism.
This morning, I woke up to 100 text messages from my dad saying, "I'm sorry they canceled your show." I go, "That's not me. That's Jimmy Kimmel."
The stalwarts of traditional American television see this clearly as a suppression of their free speech, and there are already calls for boycotts of companies behind it. But there are too many supporters who see this as part and parcel of the direction they want America to head. The First Amendment, not the last constitutional right to be debated in Donald Trump's America.
Oh, Donald, we pledge to thee our word.
Well, Greg Swenson is the chair of Republicans Overseas. Mr. Swenson, thanks so much for joining us. It looks to the rest of the world that by meddling in comedy, the current administration can't take a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a particularly sensitive time for the president. He was close friends with Charlie Kirk, and many in the administration and the cabinet were also close friends with him. So, I think there is a bit of sensitivity around anything and any sort of vile jokes at Charlie Kirk's expense. But look, I think it's one of two things, or maybe a bit of both. It's either the free market is working, right? These late night comedy shows have horrible ratings, or it's a knee-jerk reaction from the administration, again, given the sensitivities and the pain that they're suffering.
This isn't about the numbers. This is about free speech. And if it was the other way around and it was the Democrats cancelling a right-wing leaning show, you'd go ballistic. You'd say it was unconstitutional. So do you think that the state really shouldn't be involved in this at all?
Well, I think, I would agree. I mean, I'm a free speech absolutist, and I think the First Amendment, has obvious value in the American system. But what past presidents have done is not use the law or used the Constitution, or even defended the Constitution. What they've done is that they've used the bureaucracy, they've used the regulators to intimidate, and that's what it looks like. That's happening again. The people are speaking here. I mean, both the stations and ABC, received a lot of criticism from their viewers. So essentially what's happening here is it's these vile comments are offending well over half of the audience. Half of the audience are Trump supporters, and then there's another significant number of people who are just appalled with this kind of vile commentary, even if they don't like President Trump.
Well, he hasn't incited hate or anything like that, and some would argue Fox host Brian Kilmeade gets to keep his job after saying mentally ill homeless people should be executed, but a late-night comic makes a comment and loses his show. Do you agree there's a moral double standard here, initially?
I didn't like it. I didn't like what they did to many of these comedians, and even of course sometimes it backfires because they end up getting a lot more attention, like Dave Chappelle. There's a reason that these late shows had such horrible ratings, because they're not funny, and hating Trump is not funny. Hating Charlie Kirk is not funny. So if they want to continue doing that, and by the way, Jimmy Kimmel has every right to free speech. That he can just do it somewhere else, because his platform was hemorrhaging money. So I'm quite sure he'll end up somewhere else, probably at a lower wage.
It wasn't hate speech, though. And it's not about the numbers, it is about free speech. So under what legal basis would licenses be withdrawn? Because freedom of speech is protected by the Constitution. So the suggestion of removing licenses seems to be directly against the First Amendment, does it not?
Yeah, and what I constantly heard from Hillary Clinton, from Tim Walz, from John Kerry, was that free speech is not absolute. There are limits, there are laws. Now, on public broadcasting like ABC, NBC, CBS, those are broadcast on public airwaves. There are much stricter standards than you have on cable, for example. So, there is some legal arguments to be made. That's not my job, but there is not an absolute protection. There's libel. You can use the courts if you feel like you've been libeled. So, there are some guidelines. It's a little bit gray, and I do think, when in doubt, I would always fall back on absolute free speech. But in this case, I would argue, yes, the administration is raising their hand and showing some concern about some of this vile commentary. But on the other hand, the market is working. I mean, Colbert was not intimidated by the administration. Colbert was canceled, literally canceled by the network. I mean, that his show was dropped because they were hemorrhaging money, and the viewers don't like this kind of humor. And it's not what it was in the old days, I can assure you.
Hemorrhaging money, though, is not a reason to take Kimmel off the air.
Oh, no, it is for the owners of the company and the stockholders. Absolutely, it's a reason. And so,
but not for the state to meddle in it.
No, I agree with that. The state should not meddle in something that is a business or commercial issue. What they're meddling in is whether there's been violations of certain broadcasting codes, and that's okay if you want to do that. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't work at the FCC, but I do think that there's some room for the free market to work here. And that's, again, the president or the administration is not asking ABC to fire anybody because of their ratings. The market will do that themselves.
Well, let's talk about the multi-billion-dollar merger then instead, given that merger that Nexstar Media Group is seeking approval for from the FCC. This appears to be a direct threat from the FCC and a way to control media giants within America. Some would call it thuggery.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this way too much. You know, when Obama told the big banks, the only thing separating you and the pitchforks is this administration. That's not the kind of, you know, I don't like that kind of behavior. I don't like using the government bureaucracy, the regulatory bureaucracy to intimidate or get involved in commercial transactions. We've seen way too much of it. I'm not falling back on whataboutism here, but this is government intervention or intrusion, and the Democrats don't like it now, but they surely love it.
But it's the Republicans that are doing it now. So why are they doing it now? Because the examples you're using aren't comparative. They're not the same. So why are they using it now then, if it's so wrong?
Actually, they are the same, because the vileness, the commentary made by the people that were canceled by the Biden administration and the Obama administration weren't nearly as vile as this. And so there is a bit of concern that these young, vulnerable people with mental health issues are being radicalized by this rhetoric on the left. And it's troubling, and the numbers don't lie.
A lot of people would disagree with you. Some have suggested that this is all part of Project 2025 to expand presidential power. And on social media, the chair of the FCC seemed to agree. Does it look like that to you? Was this all part of the kind of 2025 plan?
Well, no, I think it's just pushback. I mean, the right has been suffering at the hands of really aggressive government intrusion into the private markets and into private lives, and that's something that Project 2025 was very clear about. And so I think it is definitely pushback. I don't think this would have happened 15 years ago, before the successive Democrat administrations were using the power of the state to intimidate people. I mean, the Great Barrington Declaration, for example, during the COVID crisis, was literally shut down and censored by the government, by the Biden administration. And then,
we're talking about the Republican administration now, though, aren't we? We're talking about this specific case. We're not talking about the Democrats and what they did.
Francis, you know that there's context here, okay? And in the past, all the Democrats would always reference, even the media critics would always reference something that Trump had done, or that a Republican had done. There has to be context here, because this kind of activity from the FCC or from the administration is exactly what we've seen for 15 years. So we can't just talk about it in isolation. It has to be talked about in context.
Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas, thank you very much.
Thanks, Francis. Thanks for having me.